Welcome to the Keto Lifestyle for Mental Health. Thank you all for joining us tonight. We are together with Natalie Earle, who is going to be our special guest speaker today. I'm really excited, as always. Natalie is really aligned with our mission. What are we stand for? Most of us being part of this group. So I think this is going to be extremely helpful for those of you that are interested in root cause treatments. So I would like to briefly introduce her and then have her share her wisdom and knowledge with us. But Natalie is a functional nutritional therapy practitioner and GAPS practitioner who brings over a decade of experience helping clients reclaim their health by addressing the root causes of chronic illness. So she really focuses on the microbiome, and she's going to tell us more about it. What I am personally most inspired by is her own story of dealing with issues that most of us partially or can probably relate to, such as PTSD, depression, eating disorders, as a cause for why she pursued this path, and kind of walking the walk and really dealing with those issues firsthand and willing to find the root cause treatment that provides relief rather than just managing symptoms. And so I'm really excited, Natalie. Welcome to the group, and tell us a little bit more about yourself in your own words and everything you would like to share with us in terms of your experience and your knowledge, and then we're going to open it also for questions towards the end.
Yes, I'm so excited. Thank you so much for having me, Donica. And if you guys haven't, if you haven't listened to Donica's interview, we had her on, her sharing her story, which I'm sure you've heard of, but it was fabulous. I loved hearing your story, Donica, and it is so aligned with my own experience in practice and the things that I've learned about the gut microbiome and why a ketogenic approach, low carb approach has worked so well for me as well. And I'll talk about that in a little bit, but definitely go and check out that podcast episode. It's called Healing with Confidence. And we'll try, I don't know, Donica, have you shared that interview? It was so good.
Share it in the chat right now, and I'll put it in the episode description as well.
Yeah, fabulous. Okay, great. So, as Donica shared, I got into this work as a nutritionist, a functional nutritionist, because of my own health issues. And mine really stemmed from childhood. And this is where the microbiome comes into play because we are gifted our microbes that are in our gut from our mothers and then from their mothers through the vaginal canal during birth. And then we are fed the kind of prebiotics through breast milk. And so a lot of issues that my clients are facing with symptoms, I will often ask, were you vaginally birthed or were you breastfed? And this gives us a window into what the microbiome looks like from baseline. And then on top of that, we have all of these different influences in our modern world that contribute to more and more of our symptoms. And for me, I had a lot of yeast infections as a kid. I had a history of trauma, which definitely we now know that our gut is really our I think of it as our first brain, but they call it the second brain because there is a two-directional street or conversation that's happening between the brain and our gut when it comes to stress and the stress that we experience if we have experienced trauma, that therefore this changes our gut microbes and the types of bacteria that are in our gut. So the kind of landscape of bacteria influences that I've had as a kid definitely set me up to later as a teenager. When I finally got my cycle, I had debilitating pain and menstrual pain that like I remember going ghost white with pain and having to go to the nurse's office in high school. I had amenorrhea in college and could have been diagnosed with PCOS or endometriosis probably, but I was wary of doctors at the time for whatever reason. I didn't want to get on birth control. I didn't want to just get antibiotics. And in college, my health really took a turn for the worse after getting the HPV vaccine, and it completely shot my immune system, which as I, looking back, it was already very much teetering because our immune system really is stemming from our gut microbiome as well. And so I had chronic UTIs. I got chronic bronchitis. I had debilitating fatigue. I remember just trying to walk. I was really athletic in college, and you would not have guessed that I was diagnosed with prediabetes at one point, but I was trying to, be healthy by eating a vegetarian diet and just exercising as much as I could because I was told that that's what was healthy. But I remember trying to walk up this mountain and I couldn't hike up this mountain. And it was the first time that I had this experience of thinking, I need to eat for my health, for how I feel, rather than for how I want to be perceived, or like the vanity issues that were starting to evolve around that time with a lot of disordered eating, over-exercising, anorexia like symptoms as well. And so it would have been very scary for a lot of people in my shoes. And I've talked to people who have had disordered eating behaviors where the diet that I ended up being taught that saved my life by a nutritionist was seemingly more restrictive than like what a lot of people say is a healthy diet, right? So a low carbohydrate diet was through the gut and psychology syndrome framework was recommended to me. And this was after college, after years of trying different things on my own. I finally started working with a nutritionist, and it was shocking to me. I had lots of food sensitivities at this time, and I thought that, a lot of people think that, okay, if I cut out more foods, like that's not healthy, right? But it was the window or the doorway to more food freedom in my life, because everything that I was doing and focusing on what foods to eat in order to rebuild my gut microbiome allowed me to create homeostasis within the ecosystem of gut bacteria, and then helped my hormones regulate, my immune system regulate, my energy came back, and my happy feel good chemicals came back, the anxiety, the depression, the zest for life, or just kind of the motivation to do things came back. And I would not have been I probably could have been diagnosed with ADHD at some point too, but it's amazing to me now that I have a business, I run a business, and there's like organizational things that are I need to do to keep that running, and I'm capable of doing that. So it's built so much confidence in the long journey that it has been for me to identify that, first off, changing my diet was one of the most empowering tools for me to change not only my physical health, but also my mental health. And then it's built so much more confidence in the rest of my life, being able to go out and do and hike the mountains that I love to hike on without issues, without concern of my body breaking down. So that's a little bit of my story. There's so many little nuances. I had mercury fillings and, a lot of other toxicity issues. And, when I was younger, I was bit by a tick. So all of those things I had to unravel in my healing journey. But what gave me the best framework for how to address it without feeling overwhelmed of like, all these different things do I need to work on do I have to do a parasite cleanse? Should I do this or that? The framework that I've learned with the gut microbiome has helped me simplify this process for not only myself, but all my clients, so that you have a framework to follow, and then it's bio-individualized as well. So what this framework really depends on is this thing called the gut microbiome, which we're going to talk about now. And the gut microbiome is this complex ecosystem that lives inside of us, and we are solely dependent on it for our life, right? So a probiotic literally means pro or for life or living things, right? So when we take probiotics, or mostly I like to recommend probiotic foods, when we are including those in our nutrition, this is giving us life. And people think that when we eat our food, that when we are breaking that down, we like mechanically digest that food and then we get those nutrients. That is only the first step. After that mechanical process, which also can go awry, and we, with functional nutrition, can help support your stomach acidity and your enzyme production through important lifestyle factors or practices. And the other step, though, is that food that we partially break down, it goes into the gut and it feeds the microbes in our intestine, and we absorb the byproducts. And so it's very mythological in a lot of ways. If there's enough good bacteria, it always defeats the evil, the bad pathogenic bacteria. So if we have enough good bacteria that is keeping this ecosystem very healthy and balanced, then what we eat goes in and we get nourishment. So in our gut, the microbes there are helping us with getting nutrients. They also help us with our immune system. That's where 90% of our immune system is getting signals from, and kind of telling our body, oh, we've got an invader, we need to protect ourselves from this or that. And that's where a lot of the immune cells are produced, actually, on the other side of the intestines. But they get signals from those bacteria. The third thing that the gut bacteria do, and that ecosystem does for us, is it's where 70% of our serotonin is produced. A high percentage of GABA receptors are there. So our feel-good chemicals, our neurotransmitters, are produced and regulated by those gut bacteria as well. And then lastly, I'll say a big component is our hormone detoxification, or just in general detoxification, right? The major detox pathway is the digestive system. So if you are not having a stool every day, this is a problem. We need to have a healthy digestive system in order to cleanse the waste that we are exposed to in our modern life. And our gut bacteria help us with that, and especially help with the hormone buildup that can happen when we don't have a healthy ecosystem in our gut. All disease really stems from nutritional deficiencies. And so when we don't have this ecosystem that's balanced, we can end up with nutritional deficiencies. And at the same time, we can also get a buildup of toxicity that's stemming from our gut, right? So like I said before, when we eat our food and we break that down and then it feeds those good bacteria, we're getting all those nutrition, all that balance. But if it's out of balance, say, these are some of the common things that in our modern world will disrupt our gut microbiome. If you've ever had an antibiotic, if you were a C-section baby, or fed predominantly formula as a baby, if you have taken steroid drugs or the birth control pill, there's a lot of other drugs or medications that will negatively influence that ecosystem and impact that ecosystem. So we have more opportunistic pathogenic bacteria, not as much good. Stress alone, right? Because of that vagus nerve connection from the brain to the gut, you can also get a lot of lower bacteria of the good bacteria and then more of those pathogens. Poor diet alone, like a refined diet high in sugar, can feed opportunistic yeast and parasites and bacteria. And then also just alcohol has some negative effects on the lining of the gut. And in our modern life, we are exposed to a lot of different chemicals, and these chemicals have a huge impact on our detox pathways and the gut microbiome. We have our gut microbiome, but we also have a skin microbiome, an ocular microbiome, vaginal microbiome, oral microbiome. So we are more bacteria than we are human, really. So we have to start thinking, what are we doing, not to our bodies, but to our microbes? And there are ways that we can feed our good bacteria and lifestyle practices that we can do to help with nourishing a healthy microbiome on the skin as well. So let's talk about some of the 4 cornerstone foods that I like to teach my clients for gut health, right? And this is where we overlap with the ketogenic diet, because if we focus more on what to eat in order to heal, we will not be, one, will decrease a lot of the clutter and the stress of like, and some of the issues that can happen when we find it, when someone prescribes a diet, we always figure out like, how can I get away with like the most amount of sugar, right? That was always my way. So I tried a lot of different types of healing diets, and I always found a way to still feed those gut microbes, right? That really liked sugar. The gut microbes that are the good bacteria, they eat everything. They eat protein, they eat fats, they eat carbs. But when we have an imbalance and we don't have enough of the good bacteria, we have more of those pathogens. If we eat a lot of carbohydrates, the preferred food source for those opportunistic is the carbs, and they will eat the carbs before the good bacteria get to eat the carbs. So the pathogenic opportunistic bacteria, they don't like protein or fat as much. And so if we can do a protocol that is focused on healthy animal fats, protein, nose to tail, then we are going to have a diet that's going to be able to shift the balance, and we can actually feed. Sorry, I just got distracted. Someone said they can't hear anything. Can everyone hear? Okay, good. Okay. So we can start to create a new influence on this complex ecosystem, that we are actually going to start feeding more of the good bacteria and starving off more of those opportunistic bacteria. So the first cornerstone food group is actually meat stock. Meat stock, this is this gelatinous liquid gold, basically, that comes from meaty bones. It's different than bone broth. It's actually completely different than bone broth. Bone broth is cooked for a really long period of time, where then we get a lot of the mineral composition, and it's very high in histamine. It's also high in glutamine, which can be a little bit more excitatory to a brain that has likely a leaky blood-brain barrier. If you have a leaky gut, you also have leaky blood-brain barrier. So glutamine is very excitatory. Think monosodium glutamate. And if you drink bone broth and get agitated, you get neurological tics, facial tics. If you get insomnia, those types of symptoms, it's likely that there's too much glutamate in that bone broth. So a meat stock is actually going to be best for a leaky gut and a microbiome that's fragile. Um, Let me talk a little bit, actually, let me go back and talk a little bit about this leaky gut phrase that I'm saying. So when we have a imbalance of gut bacteria, that is going to influence our lining of our intestines. The lining of our intestines look like this when they're healthy. It's the shag carpet of the microvilli and the villi in our gut. And this is where all the surface area of absorption of the food we can eat comes from. Those bacteria, they nourish these cells, and it's a single cell layer of the intestines. The problem is that when we have that imbalance, these cells start to get shriveled up. So they're no longer as effective in absorbing the food that we need and protecting us from the toxins of those opportunistic bacteria that are present. So we need to regrow these microvilli, and the best way to do that is that meat stock. And that meat stock is going to help that leaky gut and then also the blood-brain barrier, because it's got the perfect amount of amino acids that are ideal for healing this tissue. In the gut, we need certain amino acids, proteins from meat stock particularly, that really soothe that digestive tract. And it's also very similar to like having a wound on your skin. If you have a cut, you're not going to be using sandpaper up against that wound for a little while. You're going to want to protect it. So actually the way we cook our food helps with the healing process of those cells. And we want to do very soft cooked foods, like in the form of meat stock soups. So that's the first cornerstone, meat stock. The second cornerstone is going to be organ meats. So it's that no smell. We need these superfoods in our diet. The organ meats are always the prized food sources for every indigenous culture. They have the most nutrient density per the food, and it is exactly it's like nature's perfect multivitamin is what I like to think of it. So we can optimize certain organs from animals for different ailments that we might have. For example, for autoimmunity, I love having people eat more sweetbreads. Sweetbreads are also known as the thymus gland, and it is very good for your immune regulation. So the liver can also be used in high histamine clients. We can use kidney. So there's a lot of different organs. And if we can't actually get the organs in our diet for whatever reasons, heebie-jeebies, some of my clients are like, oh, there's no way I'm eating that. We have our ways to get that in. And sometimes supplementing with organs is actually a good first step for a lot of people. Third cornerstone food is fermented foods. So fermented foods are a huge staple of every culture, right? I love actually calling fermented foods more of cultured foods, because that is literally where our culture comes from, is our food, right? And every single culture has their own type of fermented food. And these are so important for our gut, not in that they provide just the probiotics for repopulating the gut bacteria, but they also will promote a increased nutrition from the food. So for example, sauerkraut, which is fermented cabbage, actually has maybe close to 4 times or more vitamin C after being fermented. So you can increase the nutritional value of the food you're eating through fermenting. It also provides enzymes to help with digestion. I like to think of them as digestive tonics or digestive supports of eating your meal. With every meal, we should have fermented foods available to us and incorporated. This is a really important cornerstone to repopulating those good bacteria so that we can soon add back in some starchy carbohydrates and not have a relapse of the symptoms that we were presenting with before we went low carb. And the fourth cornerstone is the non-starchy vegetables. Non-starchy vegetables, because the starches are the long chain carbohydrates. These are the most easy fermentable carbohydrates that can get into the gut and really feed all of those opportunistic pathogenic bacteria. So this is why when we go on a ketogenic diet, and I love using actually a ketogenic diet in conjunction with cornerstone foods to really optimize healing, because being ketogenic makes it easier to get an energy source, get a lot more metabolic healing at the same time as we work on the gut microbiome. So the non-starchy vegetables are the fourth cornerstone for gut healing. And these foods are just the focus, right? There might be other foods that we add back in or titrate in, or different other foods in the food list, but these are the focuses to help with regenerating the gut. So I will say there's three major food groups that we want to avoid for gut health, and sugar is number one, of course. Like, the refined sugars are very important to avoid. For some people, fruit is not a problem. However, if you have toxic sources in your life that you've experienced, like mold toxicity or heavy metals, this allows for an overgrowth of yeast in your body to proliferate. And yeast or fungi will love to eat a lot of the sugars coming from fruit even. So for a period of time, some of my clients will need to address that issue, and we'll get rid of the yeast and balance that out. And then the fruit can be enjoyed better. The starch we talked about is the second food, sugar, starch. And then the last food group that is problematic for the gut microbiome are those seed oils. So canola oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil, corn oil, grapeseed oil, all of these seed oils. Safflower is another one. They are Franken oils is what I like to call them. And that's what Weston A. Price Foundation likes to call them. And for good reason, because they are highly, highly processed, and they really degrade and create a lot of toxicity in our cell mitochondria and our energy. They really gum up our mitochondria. So we can't make energy to heal. So I fully believe that our bodies are wanting to regenerate. And the way that we can support our body to do that is through diet and lifestyle. So there's going to be some lifestyle things too that I want to share that are very helpful to support your gut microbiome. The first is getting sunlight exposure. So these microbes that are all over our skin and in our gut, all over our body, in our organs as well, they can get signals from sunlight. All the different UV rays are going to communicate to that bacteria. So the more sunlight we get, it doesn't just help our circadian rhythm, it literally is changing our gut microbes. We also can put bacteria on our skin to help with a two-directional kind of effect. The microbes in our gut influence our skin and the bacteria everywhere else in our body, and also from the top down. So a lot of my clients, I'll have them rub yogurt all over their skin, and you rub it in, right? Like, just like the OG lotion. This is where lotion came from. Okay. It is, you can use goat yogurt. You can use any kind of yogurt you want, and it rubs into the skin, and just your skin just absorbs it. We should not put anything on our skin except for food. If you wouldn't put it in your mouth, I would not put it on your skin or your scalp or your hair. Your skin is an organ. It's a detox organ, and it absorbs everything that you put on it. The last thing that I would say lifestyle wise, is getting outside, and not just to get the sunlight, but actually interacting with nature. So there's tons of studies that are done on children who have exposure to farm animals, animals in the house, or even are playing in dirt. They have healthier microbiomes. They do not have as many they don't have as many allergies. They don't have as many immune issues. And this is because of the terrain of bacteria that we are dependent on for health. We used to think that the microbes that we would get exposed to are the problem, right? So we have pasteurized everything, and we have sterilized everything in our homes, and we're still getting sick, and if not more, right? The reason for this is because when we kill the bad bacteria, we are also killing the good. So we actually want to create more diversity to our microbiome. And a good way to do that is to get out into soil, to start your garden, to grow your own food, get closer to the food, where the food comes from. And if you get a little dirt on your, on your beets or on your salad, that's okay. You don't have to fear the microbes. And of course, we want to be very, very kind of have some critical thinking about this, and just common sense about it. You can still wash off your veggies. I remember when I first learned this, I wasn't washing off any of my veggies, and dirt does not taste good. Don't just eat the dirt, but you don't want to be sterile. This actually is more problematic for your immune system and your gut microbiome. So we want to get out in nature, go out and ground with your bare feet on the ground, and to actually experience the what it's like to grow your own food, or get connected to a local farmer who's raising vegetables in a biodynamic way, so that you can get healthy ecosystem from the soil back into your gut. So I think that is mostly, I wanted to leave enough room for questions.